All right, so you're looking to really get under the skin of something, right? You want more than just the headlines. But who has the time to wade through endless articles and books these days?
Well, that's where we come in. And today we're going deep, really deep, into the world of the Mapuche people of Patagonia.
That's right. We've done the heavy lifting for you, sifting through the research so you can get right to those fascinating aha moments.
And for this deep dive, we've been poring over a really insightful article from TATANKA, the Mapuche of Patagonia, a legacy of resilience and cultural revival. It's packed with information, so we're ready to unpack it all for you.
So before we get into the specifics, let's make sure we're all on the same page. The Mapuche are one of the largest indigenous groups in South America.
Right.
Their ancestral lands are primarily in southern Chile and Argentina, a region we know as Patagonia, which is just stunning, by the way.
Absolutely breathtaking landscapes.
So in this deep dive, we're going to explore their history, the challenges they've faced and continue to face, and the remarkable cultural revival they're leading.
A story of incredible resilience and a unique cultural identity.
Exactly. So to kick things off, even the name Mapuche has a deeper meaning, doesn't it?
It really does. In their language, Mapudungun, Mapuche, means people of the land. This connection to the land is so central to their identity. It's not just where they live, it's woven into their entire being.
And they've been in Patagonia for a long, long time, something like 2,000 years, according to the article.
Imagine arriving in that diverse landscape, those forests, plains, mountains. They adapted and thrived in all these different environments, which is pretty incredible.
It really is. And they didn't just survive, they built a complex and thriving society. The article talks about their traditional social structure. They lived in smaller communities, each led by a lonco, which means chief.
Right, and these communities were then organized into larger tribal groups called LOF, which were kind of like alliances sharing territories and resources. And this structure, this ability to come together, played a big role in their resistance against the Spanish later on.
That's so interesting, the loft being important for their resistance. And speaking of their way of life, the article really emphasizes how intertwined it was with the natural world.
Absolutely. Their spiritual beliefs, centered on Unganekan, the creator god, show a deep reverence for nature. It's not just about using the land, it's about a spiritual connection, a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept, and their daily life really reflected that. They lived communally in ruca, their traditional homes. They relied on agriculture, crops like potatoes, maize, quinoa, and they also hunted, fished, raised livestock.
A self-sustaining society in harmony with nature. But then, of course, the Spanish arrived in the 16th century and everything changed. This is where their story takes a really dramatic turn. Unlike many other indigenous groups, the Mapuche put up a fierce, and I mean fierce, resistance.
The Arauco War from 1550 to 1600 really highlights that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shows their incredible determination to defend their way of life, their land, their very identity.
And they weren't just fighting defensively, they were winning battles. The Battle of 𝗑ᗕᗕડા in 1598 is a key example.
A turning point. They didn't just win, they pushed the Spanish back north. And, that's not something you see very often in colonial history.
Right. The Mapuche actually achieved a period of independence, defending their territory for centuries. That's huge. But sadly, the 19th century brought a new wave of challenges, what the article calls the conquest of the desert.
Yeah, a pretty brutal chapter. Basically, both Argentina and Chile launched military campaigns to expand their control over Patagonia, and that meant taking land from the indigenous people who lived there, including the Mapuche.
So what did that mean for the Mapuche? Like, what actually happened?
Well, they lost vast amounts of their ancestral territory. Imagine that, the land your people have lived on for centuries, suddenly taken away. And then, to make matters worse, many Mapuche were forcibly relocated to reservations or pushed into more remote, less fertile areas. It was devastating.
You can only imagine the trauma of that displacement being torn from your land. And then even into the 20th and 21st centuries, the pressure on their land and their culture continued.
It did, and it took on new forms. Now, it wasn't just the state taking land. It was large-scale agriculture, forestry, hydroelectric projects, all driven by the desire for economic development in Patagonia.
And that development came at a cost, right?
It did. For the Mapuche, it meant further loss of territory, discrimination, and marginalization. Their cultural and land rights were eroded, even though they were there first.
So a fight for survival, but also a fight for their rights. And the article talks about a resurgence in the demand for land rights, a movement to reclaim what was taken.
Absolutely. It's incredible to see. Many Mapuche communities are organizing, actively working to get their ancestral lands back. They're not giving up. They're fighting for their heritage.
That's incredibly inspiring. But this fight for land rights has led to what the article calls the Mapuche conflict in Chile and Argentina. It sounds like a very tense situation.
It is. In Chile especially, you have Mapuche activists protesting, occupying land, trying to reclaim their heritage. And unfortunately, this has often been met with arrests, even charges under anti-terrorism laws. It's a very polarized situation.
Wow, that's intense. And what about in Argentina? The article mentions that the situation there is complex too.
Yeah, the Argentine government, they've legally recognized Mapuche land rights in some ways, but putting those rights into practice, actually returning the land, that's proven much more difficult. It's a tangle of legal issues, economic interests, and historical grievances.
A tough situation for sure. But amidst all these struggles, there's also something incredibly hopeful happening, and that's the revival of their language and culture. It's a story of resilience, of not letting their heritage fade away.
Absolutely. Mapudungun, their language was actually facing extinction. But now, there's this amazing effort to preserve and revive it, led by the Mapuche people themselves. They're setting up language schools, cultural centers, even media outlets broadcasting in Mapudungun.
Wow, that's so encouraging. I mean, a language is so much more than just words. It's a whole way of thinking, a connection to your ancestors.
Exactly. And it's not just the language. They're reviving their traditional weaving, music, ceremonies, spiritual beliefs, all these vital aspects of their culture. It's really inspiring.
The article even describes some of their traditional celebrations, like Nehuen and Puma. Could you tell us a bit more about what those signify?
Sure. So Nihun is all about honoring the ancestors. It's about acknowledging those who came before, their wisdom, their struggles, their connection to the land. In Puma, well, it's a beautiful celebration of the connection between the human world and the spiritual realm. These ceremonies are living proof that their culture is alive and thriving.
It's amazing to see how they're keeping these traditions alive, and they're also finding ways to blend their heritage with modern life. The article mentions their involvement in ecotourism and sustainable agriculture, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it shows they're adaptable and forward-thinking. They're finding ways to be stewards of their land, protect their environment, and create economic opportunities that align with their values.
And they're working to regain control over natural resources, right? Like
Yeah.
forests, rivers, mountains, all those things that are so vital to them.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming their traditional role as caretakers of their ancestral land. And as we look to the future, well, the article acknowledges that there are still many challenges ahead.
Yeah, the land disputes, the fight for political recognition, the need for economic opportunities, those are all ongoing battles.
They are. But there's also so much hope. Their resilience, their cultural revival, their commitment to their land, it's all incredibly powerful. They're not just surviving, they're actively shaping their future.
The article says it beautifully. The Mapuche people of Patagonia embody a story of perseverance, resistance, and cultural renewal. As they navigate the complexities of modern life while holding fast to their ancestral roots, they continue to contribute to the rich tapestry of South American indigenous cultures. The world would do well to listen to their voices, voices that have echoed through the windswept landscapes of Patagonia for millennia.
It's a reminder that their story is not just about the past, it's about the present and the future. It's about respecting their rights, recognizing their contributions, and learning from their deep connection to the land.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've learned about the Mapuche's long history, their resistance, their challenges, and their inspiring cultural revival. It's a story that really makes you think, makes you appreciate their strength and resilience.
It does. And for anyone looking for those aha moments, I think the Mapuche people offer a powerful example of how culture and identity can endure, even in the face of huge adversity.
Which brings us to our final thought. Considering the Mapuche's long and deep connection to their land, what can we learn from them about balancing economic development with the rights and cultural preservation of indigenous communities? It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, not just in Patagonia, but everywhere.
Absolutely. It's a global issue, and the Mapuche story offers valuable lessons for us all.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new, and we encourage you to continue exploring the fascinating world of the Mapuche people.
It's a journey worth taking.